Thank you, Senator Avella, Senator Kruger, and Senator Serrano, and especially to Senator Avella for holding this hearing. My name is Gusti Bogok. I've been involved in the fracking issue for 3 years now. I'm the co-chair of the Sierra Club Atlantic Chapter Gas Drilling Task Force. The Atlantic Chapter was one of the first groups to come out for a ban, and unfortunately certain things happened where we weren't able to advocate fully for it. My personal feelings go a bit stronger than the ban. I feel that this is a criminal activity. It harms people. Any other activity that harms people needs to be criminalized, has been criminalized. Why not? Fracking will ultimately kill people. It is killing people. It's making people sick. It's permanently damaging the environment and our future resources. It's insanity. I'm actually here to, however, having said all that, and I'm speaking personally, that those were my personal comments, not associated with the Sierra Club. I'm here to read the testimony of Dr. Ronald Bishop, and so I'd like to, it's kind of a long treatise here. It's 12 pages. I'd like to just read the introduction and summary, if you wouldn't mind. So, Dr. Ronald Bishop, Chemistry and Biochemistry Department, SUNY Oneonta. Thank you for inviting me to air some of my concerns about the petroleum industry in New York State. I'd like to bring your attention to this industry's record of cleaning up old well sites. Fewer than 1 out of every 7 depleted oil and gas wells for which there are records have ever been plugged as required by state law. Please refer to your copy of the soon-to-be published article on the history of oil and gas well abandonment in New York State. And this is not just an old problem. The most recent plugging rate is the lowest recorded rate in our history, with fewer than 1 out of every 15 wells on average being plugged these days. The petroleum industry in New York systematically ignores state law, leaving over 93% of its spent projects to be cleaned up by, quote, someone else. State agency officials have never brought this industry into compliance, and their regulatory control has measurably weakened over time. Therefore, any legislation you advance will have limited impact on the prosperity, health, and safety of New York citizens, as long as the executive branch of state government continues to let us down by failing to enforce it. So before petroleum industry operators are allowed to prosecute projects of unprecedented intensity, complexity, and scale in their exploration and production and transportation of natural gas from unconventional reservoirs, you should explore ways to require that they clean up the old messes before they are permitted to make new ones. Until the industry's proven culture of ignoring state law is reversed, writing new state laws will be of little value. And then I'd just like to read his summary. The aim of this study was to evaluate the success of New York State's regulatory program for the oil and gas industry with respect to post-production plugging and reclamation. Annual reports from the Division of Mineral Resources, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation over the last 25 years portray an oil and gas industry which has consistently neglected to plug most, 86%, of its depleted wells. In this regard, the most recent record has been the worst. Plugging percentage rates ranged from 3.5 to 7.1% throughout the 2000s. Further, there is no program existing or proposed to periodically monitor and repair plugged and abandoned wells, which have begun to leak. Therefore, new plugging and reclamation guidelines presented in the revised draft supplement to the generic environmental impact statement for oil and gas and solution mining regulatory program and proposed new regulations for plugging and abandoning depleted oil and gas wells are inadequate. Moreover, they are mere academic exercises. Unless the state of New York does something to dramatically alter the long-standing culture of neglect, we can reasonably expect oil and gas industry operators to ignore any new standards, just as they systematically ignore existing standards today. New York's oil and gas industry is just 9 years from its bicentennial since the pilot project, a natural gas well near Fredonia, was drilled in 1821. As our first oil and gas wells went into decline, a new issue was recognized, and New York State became the first state to require the plugging of abandoned wells in 1879. No particular state entity existed to monitor compliance or enforce the plugging law, but an 1892 amendment to it offered half of any collected fines to informants who reported violations. 130 years later, we have a dedicated and sophisticated Bureau of Oil and Gas Regulation within the Division of Mineral Resources of our Department of Environmental Conservation. State guidance documents and regulations have undergone multiple updates, including those newly proposed in the revised SGIS for oil and gas solution mining. With great attention paid these days to questions of proper gas well construction, appropriate control of chemicals and waste, and other production issues, post-production cleanup has received relatively little notice. In numerous discussions with both opponents and proponents of shale gas development, all appear to consider our state's legacy of improperly abandoned oil and gas wells a real problem, but an old problem. The common perception is that the DEC now has this issue under control. He goes on, but since the time is short, I will just submit this testimony. It's basically that we can't even control our old wells, let alone start drilling thousands of new wells. Thank you.